Switch 2 Pro Controller Review. Is it worth the upgrade? In this video, I break down everything you need to know about Nintendo's latest Pro Controller, from the build quality to performance and hidden features you might have missed. If you find this helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more honest reviews and gaming content. On the surface, when you look at the original Pro Controller versus the Switch 2 Pro Controller, looks like not much has changed, but there are differences. For starters, this one doesn't have the chat button functionality for the Switch 2, so, jokingly called the cash button, since eventually Nintendo plans to charge for the online service, and why do that when you have Discord for free, right? So that button is there. Also internally, it has the HD Rumble 2 compared to the 1, so there's that difference. In terms of how it feels, I do like how the Switch 2 feels better than the original one, but I am still a fan of this material on the original Switch Pro Controller. It's a little more grippy, whereas this one, it has a nice texture to it overall throughout, but it's not as grippy. It's very smooth, easy to slip from the hands, so there's the -1 point for that. But one of my favorite things about the Switch 2 Pro Controller is the GL and GR buttons. It is super handy to have these there. You can set them up for any game, and not only that, but it remembers what game and settings you set for that game. So if I'm playing Zelda, and these are my actual Zelda controls, I have this one for sprinting, and I have this back button for jumping. So I can sprint and jump, whereas before it was kind of a little pain in the ass because you would move with this stick and then you would run with B, but then to jump was X, so it was like a weird placement. So not only that, but your thumb's over here, so you can't really control the camera when you're moving around and jumping, but now you have all of that access when you have those two back buttons: sprint, jump, move, camera. So it makes a world of a difference when playing games like that. This is why I always liked some of the third-party controllers out there that added back buttons, usually because first party like Nintendo never really incorporated this before, so it's nice to have. One of the other differences is actually the sticks themselves. The sticks are extremely smooth and I love it. It's very comfortable. They make virtually no noise when you're going around the rim, and it's just very, very pleasant to use. Very pleasant to use. And go back to the old stick, you can you can hear it. It's not as smooth. Still a comfortable controller, but this, when you have the Switch 2 Pro Controller, it feels like the first one was definitely the prototype. The buttons, everything else feels the same in terms of how comfortable it is to hold in the hand, button placement, all of that's the same. Now, one of my biggest concerns about the Switch 1 Pro Controller was the D-pad, because it was just too mushy, like in terms of the actual, how the buttons actually work on the inside. Very, very mushy, imprecise. There were workarounds if you didn't want to do extreme modding where you would, solder new components on. There were ways around it by using like Kapton tape over the components that activate the buttons. And you'll see a bunch of videos for the Switch Pro Controller online for that. But it's still, unfortunately, with the Switch 2 Pro Controller, it's still unfortunately mushy. However, in terms of actuation and recognizing your inputs, it is a lot better. You're not missing any inputs like you were before. However, I still don't like the mushy D-pad. And, Nintendo's supposed to be known for, the D-pad. Like having the Super Nintendo D-pad, everybody loved that. But now that's not the case anymore. D-pads, and why mushy D-pads aren't my favorite, they probably have an actual name, I just called them that because that's what it feels like, is because it uses a particular membrane and a flex cable to actuate inputs. So this is actually the original flex cable of my Steam Deck that I removed. So these pads here interact with the D-pad membrane. This also does this. It also looks the same for the other buttons as well, A, B, X, Y. But when you press these, you don't actually hear anything. Nothing happens because all it is a rubber membrane touching these inputs. And whenever the contact is made, it activates the effect of said button. So I removed them with a kit, and I actually got tactile buttons. And these tactile switches give a much more satisfying, so you can see my cat here all over the place, click. You can actually hear the click. And it's much more precise when playing platformers or playing fighting games, things like that. And I ended up loving it so much, I eventually did it to the other side. So you can get these precise clicks. Before, the original buttons were quieter, however, they just weren't, it was just mushy, it didn't feel precise. Some games kind of annoyed me when you were playing them. It's a niche thing. I'm just one of those players that likes this, but trust me, like once you try it, you're like, wow, there's a big difference there. It feels like the quality is jumped up times 10. So it is something that I hope that the Switch 2 Pro controller will get in the future, maybe through a kit. Otherwise, it leaves, us to figure out another way to mod for ourselves or buy our own tactile switches to mod in there. But I got the modding kit from Extreme Rate, which I highly recommend their stuff. They make their own kits to do mods like these. So if you're not afraid to open up your devices or you have experience, it is something that I highly recommend because it makes a world of a difference. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the Switch 2 controller. I'm disappointed with the D-pad. However, I'm glad at least they've got it good enough so that it does recognize inputs properly, because that was the biggest problem. Sometimes I would be playing a certain game and the inputs just wouldn't recognize the way I would like them to. So at least it does the job, right? But hopefully in the future, Extreme Rate, if you're watching, hint, hint, wink, wink, you make a kit for the Switch 2 Pro controller. Because otherwise we would have to we'd have to get you have to get your own switches that you can get off Amazon that aren't necessarily made to the same level of quality that Extreme Rate would do it, because the Extreme Rate, they make custom parts so that you can put them into your devices. But it's always nice when you have a company can make something specifically for a device rather than you MacGyver it. But MacGyvering does work, so you always have that option. But sometimes it leads to you adding extra modification if the switch is too big or you can't find a switch of the right size, things like that. But it is a recommended controller. I do recommend this controller for the Switch 2. It's just going to feel a lot better in the hands than the Joy-Cons. Even though the Joy-Cons are bigger, this is still recommended. I still prefer this over the Joy-Cons unless I'm playing in like mouse mode or something, or the game has mouse features, because if it does, then I'm going to be using that. And then I use the Joy-Con grips to actually play my games, and then that way I can just easily take out the Joy-Cons and then use the mouse mode whenever needed. If this video was helpful, I hope you guys like, share, and subscribe. Be sure to hit the bell notification icon so you can be notified when the next episode drops. And until then, I'll catch you guys on the next one.